Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to this recovery masterclass. I take it that you're here because you've been struggling to recover from narcissistic abuse, and I do hope that you'll get some great value from this. So without further ado, okay, so what are you going to get from this masterclass? So first of all, I'm going to show you the tried and tested step-by-step process, explain the importance of each of these steps, and why you have to do the hows and whys of having to do these steps, and then also finding professional support. And when I say professional support, I'm not specifically referring to me, okay? Every coach or therapist will not be your cup of tea, and every potential client is not every coach or therapist's cup of tea. So I will provide you with some tips on how to find your cup of tea in relation to a coach or a therapist. And if you stay until the end, I have an offer for you that if you're still struggling with your recovery journey, you'd really be silly to turn it down. And best of all, it's 100% free. I really truly believe that the information I will be providing in the masterclass will give you clarity on what is involved to really heal. It won't be your typical Real Union Cell webinar. It took me so long to heal, and I truly believe that this will help shorten anyone's healing journey. I also don't want to take up too much of your time. I'm going to try to keep it to 45 minutes, so I'm going to move through this pretty quickly, but you will have the recording to refer back to later on. But as you have signed up for this masterclass, every few days I will also be sending you some tips and tricks in relation to the next step in this roadmap to help you along your recovery journey. Please also, if there are any questions, just put them in the chat or note them down as we're going along, and there'll be an opportunity for questions and answers right at the end. But first, let me just quickly tell you a little about me, and I'm not going to go through my whole story. If you're really interested, you can go to my website and the full story is actually there. But just to give you an idea, I myself have suffered from narcissistic abuse, 2 different relationships, and having just started recovering from the first one, spending about 15 years in that one, I ended up with another narcissist, 2 completely different types of narcissists. And it was only actually by the end of my second narcissist that I actually really started understanding what narcissistic abuse really was. And even then, it took me a long time to accept that I could possibly be a victim to a narcissist, because as far as I was concerned at that time, you know, narcissism or narcissists, you only found those in movies, not in any normal day-to-day life. But so that's really my story. I've been fully recovered for almost 4 years now. It was a long journey for me. I know what it's entailed, and having had my clients, I realized, because everyone's story is different, I realized the different things that different people need. And I've put a lot of work into this roadmap, and I do feel it's able to suit just about anyone, even though all of our experiences are unique, and even our recovery journeys are also unique. But this recovery roadmap is a great guide for just about anyone. Anyway, that's all about me. I'm not going to spend any more time on me. So this is my recovery roadmap. It's my own personal one. It's not a copy from anyone else. It's what I feel is important to focus on. And you will receive a copy of this in the email that you'll receive after this webinar, together with the recording. So this is my roadmap, and you'll see it's an 8-step roadmap. So here we have the 8 steps, which will go. So here we have the 8 steps, which I will go through in a little more detail. Now, you will see that only at step 8 is self-love mentioned, and many of you will know that this is the foundation to healing from narcissistic abuse. But as we go through, I hope you'll understand why moving through your recovery in this step-by-step process is really important. And when we get to step 8, which focuses on self-love, I actually use the 10 branches of self-love. Not quite sure who developed them. I don't really care, to be fair. But if you have a look on Google, these are quite often referenced as the areas to focus on for any building up of your self-love. But when we get to step 8, I'll explain the importance of the order in more detail too. Okay, so let's start with step 1. Now, I know you're saying to yourself, why would they do this to me? How could they do this to me? What did I do that was so bad for me to deserve to be treated so badly? Am I really so worthless? And this is why it is so important to educate ourselves on narcissistic abuse. Narcissistic abuse, or any kind of abuse from someone suffering from a cluster B personality disorder, defies psychology. And that's why educating yourself helps you realize that they are really the ones with the problem, and just importantly, a problem that cannot be fixed by just about anyone. Okay, and I know later on you'll see I possibly contradict myself a little bit, but by educating yourself, this will help validate why you felt the way you did in the relationship, and also why you feel the way you do now. Okay, so 3 areas to particularly educate yourself on are, and I would start on cognitive dissonance, and that is where the toxic person switches between punishment and reward for no rhyme or reason. Gaslighting, otherwise referred to as crazy making, because that's literally what it does, and this alone has led many victims to actually become institutionalized. That's how bad it often gets. And from these two, you will understand trauma bonding a bit more when you go and look that up. And if you identify that you are trauma bonded, here is a simple technique I would really like you to try. So write a list of all the negative things about your toxic person, what they said, what they did, and how they made you feel. Read it first thing in the morning and last thing at night. To read it at night can also help lessen sleep anxiety. But keep this list handy for any time you feel somehow drawn to the toxic person, or maybe feel emotion, those similar emotions about feeling worthless, and then just read it again. You'll also notice that as you do this, more and more realizations will come to you of their toxic behavior. And it's important that you keep on adding these to the list. But this is really a very simple but very effective exercise. So I would try this. Say that Google can really provide you with all the resources you need, okay? Joining a Facebook group can really help you realize that you're not alone, but it does come with a caveat, okay? Staying in these groups for too long can actually keep you in a victim state, as too many of the posts in there are actually written from a victim state. So just be cautious about spending too much time or too long in a Facebook group. And then when we get on to books, I have read about 5 to 6 books specific to narcissistic abuse now, and I have to be honest, I have been disappointed by the sensationalism of narcissists in all of them. I know as victims of this type of abuse, it can make us feel better, but this is really short-lived. But long-term, it's only going to keep us in a victim stage, which doesn't allow us to be open up to heal. I personally advise people spending 2 weeks of almost frantically watching, listening, reading just about everything around narcissistic abuse. And I have 3 reasons for this. One, with the aim of becoming educated in narcissism, first of all, because it is a bit of a bizarre condition. And secondly, to validate why you felt the way you did while you were in the relationship and why you feel the way you do now. And it is really important to educate yourself in those areas. And number 3, if you're suffering from narcissistic abuse, you're often going to behave in a way that doesn't make sense. Example, yearning for them when you know they are harmful to you. This education helps prepare you for what might be coming, and and to actually plan, by putting things in place for when that happens. Like that exercise I've just mentioned with regard to negative traits of your toxic person. You've actually, you're going to have those yearnings to get back with your narcissist, even though you know they're definitely no good for you. So you know you're going to be drawn to those things. So instead of thinking, oh my God, I want them so badly, and you give them a call, you say to yourself, okay, I knew this was coming. And this is what I have in place to try and help me so that I don't give in at this point when I know I need to be strong and have courage. But also educate yourself of what characterizes a healthy relationship. And here are 3 or 4 core characteristics that make up a healthy relationship. Maybe assess all the close relationships in your life and see if they actually include these characteristics. And if they don't, maybe question whether you can possibly do some work to improve them, or maybe whether these people should actually be in your life. And here's a lovely quote from Jim Rohn, which explains a healthy relationship really well. So I'll just give you a chance to read that. Then we get on to step number 2, which is self-care. Personally, I believe that to really have a good self-care practice, it needs to incorporate all these 9 elements. If you go into Google, you'll see there are quite a few different views, but I have, due to having really poor health myself, I've had to do a lot of work in trying to repair myself in some way, and I'm still on that healing journey physically. But I have realized that these really are the core elements to a really good self-care practice. And self-care is important for each of us to be practicing, no matter whether we're going through a difficult time or not. It's like a supplement to stop mental, physical, psychological, or emotional illness. But one thing to take away, for any kind of recovery program, whether it's alcoholism, drug addiction, getting over a traumatic event, self-care is especially important as a support during your recovery. There is some deep emotional work required for any kind of recovery. And without the self-care support in place, there is a strong likelihood a recovery program might be too overwhelming. Don't estimate the importance of journaling in your recovery journey. If you haven't started a journal yet, I would really advise you to start one today. But I do also have a self-care e-guide that I will be sending together with the recording. So if you haven't really got a self-care practice in place, then look out for the link in the email that I will be sending to you in the next day or so. Then we get on to step number 3. Okay, it's about us, not them. And it's come to realize we really can't change others, especially not narcissists. But even relationships with those that aren't narcissists, if we change our own behaviors, this is very often likely to change the behavior of the other person in your life. Now, in relation to narcissistic abuse, it really is a waste of time thinking that your behavior is going to change their behavior. Once again, this is why education is important in relation to narcissistic abuse. Narcissistic abuse victims tend to ruminate excessively on the narcissist and their behaviors, but only by focusing on themselves in this respect will it really allow the recovery process to start. But it's also important to be able to take responsibility for how our own behaviors allowed us to enter into a toxic relationship. So here we're talking about our adult relationships, not referring to our childhood relationships with a narcissistic parent, because they are quite different. You really can't hold any child responsible for those relationships. And this in no way is blaming ourselves, just to have a realization of the things we need to change within ourselves. We need to be willing to realize and accept, we fell victim to the love bombing because we maybe had a desperate, unhealthy need to feel loved. We chose to ignore those red flags, and I know many of you, when you look back, you think, oh my God, yes, those red flags were definitely there. We allowed the toxic person to talk disrespectfully towards us, and we chose to believe they would change, even though they kept on reoffending over and over again for some of us. Then step number 4 is getting comfy with our emotions. Regardless of whether it's from an old repressed childhood trauma or simply from living with a lot of stress, it's not uncommon for there to be loads of stored negative emotions that we need to process. And although an overflowing bucket of positivity is great to have, this obviously doesn't apply to negative emotions. As you can imagine, the emptier the bucket of negative emotions, the better. By identifying, facing, feeling, and healing our emotions, we can start to move from feeling that tension, stress, and anxiety into a life that you'd more easily be able to describe as one filled with ease, lightness, and emotional freedom. Depending on your starting point, though, this could take months of constant commitment, which really was my experience. And I know that many of you are like I was, in that you struggle to actually just identify your emotions in the first place. There is a lovely resource called the Feelings Wheel, which you're likely to find extremely useful if this is you. When we get to this step in my emails, I will send you the link, but if you just go to Google and look up the Feelings Wheel, you will find it there. And daily journaling, again, is super important in relation to getting comfortable with your emotions. And this quote, I think, explains it extremely well. You don't build psychological resilience by feeling good all the time. You build it by getting better at feeling bad. And you know, when you see those blissfully happy people, generally it's not because nothing bad happens to them, but rather the positive perspective that they're able to attach to their experiences. So please keep that in mind. Next, we have step number 5, which is negative thinking. Now, we all have that little voice talking shit to us. Some of us are just far worse at it than others. And if you have experienced narcissistic abuse or a particularly toxic relationship, not only do you have your own voice talking shit to you, but you can't seem to switch off your ex's voice doing the same. I'll always get my clients to commit solely to this early on in their recovery journey, as it is a lifelong habit that will need to be broken. We all have the judge in us, and it is unlikely to ever leave us, really, but we can find a way to better manage on how it affects us. Just like becoming comfy with your emotions, stopping your negative thoughts is going to need some constant commitment for weeks and maybe even months. But even then, it requires constant maintenance throughout the rest of your life. And this is why everyone who practices it swears by mindfulness and meditation as a daily practice, because this really helps keep those negative thoughts at bay. Coping with grief. Step number 6, coping with grief. For my clients, it is about grieving the relationship. Even if you have no yearning to go back to your partner, in many cases, you still need to grieve the years you've lost to an abusive relationship, the dreams that were attached to that relationship, and also the relationships you've lost due to ending this relationship. But many of you may not have fully grieved other events or experiences in your life, and these could be anything like the loss of a job, death of a loved one, death of a pet. Maybe you lost your home, or possibly you had a miscarriage or even a termination. So there's like to be some kind of grief you're going to have to deal with. And like I said before, when I send you the email in relation to this, I will send you, I always send you at least one exercise to practice to try and help you. But I would encourage you to start going through the roadmap now and to start exploring exercises that are out there in relation to each of these steps in the meantime. Step number 7, releasing trauma. Just about every single one of us has some unresolved trauma. It may be some kind of one-off significant event like a car accident, the sudden unexpected death of a loved one, or being made redundant. Or it could be longer-term trauma like childhood sexual abuse, willful or even unwillful neglect by a parent, or physically or psychologically abusive relationships, which is very much what we're talking about here. But for many of us, we have traumas we're living with that we don't even realize that this is completely normal. And some memories may be insignificant, but until we delve deeper into our emotions, our thoughts and grieving, we don't realize the true impact an event has actually had on us. And the problem with unresolved traumas is if they're not resolved, they build up over time like a bucket filling up with water. And when that bucket of traumas becomes full, it overflows into not just anxiety, which is the most obvious symptom, but also into your physical health, which is what happened to me. Now, a lot of the work you would have done until now would have helped resolve many of your traumas. I'm certain of that. But for some, these may be too traumatic, and you may need some alternative professional support to help you through. And here's a list of some interventions that are proven to be quite successful. EMDR seems to be the most effective for narcissistic abuse, but you may need to use more than one treatment or technique depending on the traumas that you're actually struggling to release. Okay, then we get on to step number 8, self-love. First of all, let me be clear. Self-love is not some namby-pamby shit that only touchy-feely people practice, okay? And I learned that the hard way. Having a healthy level of self-love is really essential to being able to live a happy life. And if you have fallen victim to a toxic person of any kind, I can guarantee you that you do not have sufficient self-love. Building our self-love is really the core element of healing from narcissistic abuse. Okay? So yeah, I'd just like to show you some signs of a lack of self-love, just to give you an idea of how they can manifest in us. And this is by no means an exhaustive list, but I'm sure you can also recognize at least 1 or 2 in yourself. And then we have some typical attributes of those that display a healthy level of self-love. And I can't believe there is a single person who's watching this masterclass who wouldn't want to experience these. And I feel even narcissists deep down wish they had the ability to develop these kinds of attributes. Okay, so we finally got to working on self-love. And I see the self-love journey a bit like a snakes and ladders game. Okay, as you go along, I take it you're all aware of how to play snakes and ladders. Okay, so you're going along, you might hit a ladder and you go up a bit, or you might even go up a lot. But you're also going to be hitting those snakes, and there might be short snakes and there might be long. So these 10 branches of self-love are universally accepted as the areas that need to be focused to build one's self-love. And I found them particularly useful for this roadmap to provide a systematic approach for those who choose to do the recovery journey on their own. And with regard to the self-love branches, I feel it's important to follow them in a particular order so that you not only hit far less snakes in your self-love game, but you're also likely to hit far shorter ones. You will notice, though, as I go through these, some elements have already been covered in the previous steps 1 to 6. And when you focus on each of these self-love elements individually, you'll realize that at least one other element is being developed at the same time. Although there is no clear linear process to building self-love, there is a purposeful intention in the way I've ordered them. Say, if you were to focus on self-expression before you've done some focused work on self-awareness or self-acceptance, a lot of the time and energy spent on self-expression would be wasted, making your self-love journey so much longer. Because you do need to have gone through the self-awareness and self-acceptance to really be self-expressive. So now we'll go through all the self-love elements, giving you an idea of what they actually mean and the kinds of things you will do to actually work on them. So first we have self-care, and we've already discussed that, so I won't go any more into that. Self-compassion and self-forgiveness is really covered in the negative thinking. Self-compassion and self-forgiveness, this is really about being kind to ourselves. And the step around negative thinking and journaling contributes significantly to learning to practice self-compassion and self-forgiveness. So those are really the exercises you will do in this respect. Then we move on to self-awareness, and a lot of us create unnecessary difficulties in our life because we refuse to honestly appraise what we think, feel, and do. We exist day to day, compensating for or tiptoeing around issues that hold us back instead of dealing with them directly and taking action to improve the situation long term. An extremely important exercise in building our self-awareness and self-honesty is doing a core values assessment. Another exercise which is very useful at this point is doing the Wheel of Life, and you can choose which areas of your life you'd like to assess. And as you go through your recovery journey, you'll recognize that your scores in each of those areas are improving all the time. Branch number 4 is self-acceptance, and this is about accepting all our attributes, positive or negative. It's not enough to simply concentrate on the good or positives about ourselves. To develop true self-acceptance, we must also embrace the negative and the ugly parts. This is most obviously apparent in relation to our physical attributes, but we all have our own unique ugly realities that we need to struggle to accept. And again, journaling is very powerful in relation to this, but we can also do, there's some fantastic exercises in Google that help us to do, depending on what our ugly truths are. And I will also send you a little exercise to do when we get you this step in the email trail. Branch number 5 is self-respect. And being self-respecting means that we believe at a core level that we are worthy of being treated fairly, with courtesy and with respect. And this is from our friendships and relationships to our work commitments. Having self-respect ensures that we're treated well, given fair opportunities, have our needs and desires met, and remain on equal footing with other people. With no self-respect, we are prone to excessive self-sacrifice, letting ourselves be walked over and used. Why? We're all here. Abandoning our true self and authentic needs, and giving up on our dreams. And other forms of what I call self-abuse. And the best way to do this is to practice enforcing boundaries in our lives. If you've allowed a toxic person to impact your life, it means you haven't enforced healthy boundaries. So part of this is to literally practice enforcing boundaries, to recognize what are the things you want and what you don't want in your life, and standing up for yourself and asking for them, or asking for them not to happen. And every time you do this, it helps to empower you to do it the next time again. And slowly but surely, you'll find that this builds up. So this takes practice. The 6th branch is self-trust, and this means we trust ourselves to literally survive situations and practice kindness, self-compassion, and not perfection. It means we refuse to give up on ourselves and just trust that when we go out in the day, we're going to make the best decision possible for ourselves. But also, if we fail in some way, we're able to forgive ourselves. So we trust that we're able to practice self-forgiveness. Branch number 7 is self-esteem. Self-esteem is what we think and feel and believe about ourselves. It's based on our opinions and beliefs about ourselves, which can sometimes feel really difficult to change, I know. And our self-esteem can affect whether we like and value ourselves as a person, are able to make decisions and assert ourselves, recognize our strengths and weaknesses, feel able to try new or difficult things, show kindness towards ourselves, move past mistakes without blaming ourselves unfairly, take the time we need for ourselves, believe we matter and are good enough, and believe we deserve happiness. Now, you may have noticed that self-esteem is also closely linked to self-awareness and self-acceptance. But once again, when we start to do the work on this, we realize that there will still be loads more opportunity for development under self-esteem, and that don't necessarily include self-awareness and self-acceptance. And this again is about practicing, going out and trying to do all those things, showing the kindness towards yourself, move past mistakes, take time for ourselves, able to make decisions and assert ourselves, know that the boundaries work. And only by implementing all these things do you build that self-esteem. And this is where you reach an equilibrium. So this is a fantastic place for anyone to be at. And anyone who's at this point is able to maintain a healthy state, a healthy and happy state. Okay. And from here, we're going to move on to actually where we build a more empowering state. And so that moves us on to branch number 8, which is self-empowerment. Now, self-empowerment means taking control of our lives. It's about more than just feeling able to do so. True self-empowerment requires us to set meaningful goals, to identify what we want from our life, and then take that action to achieve those goals and have more impact over the world around us. Having self-awareness and self-confidence is essential for us to feel empowered, which if we work through the roadmap, we would already have focused on these areas. So by the time we get here, we should be in a really good position to start working towards our meaningful goals, which empowers us even more. Okay, then we get to branch number 9, which is self-play. And this is not what some of you might be thinking. This is just a play on words to go with the rest of my self-love branches, and it's just intended to mean playfulness. Play has also been shown to release endorphins, improve brain functionality, and stimulate creativity. And as I'm sure you can imagine, it also keeps us feeling nice and young and energetic. Okay? It's really important for adults too. Then last but not least, we have branch number 10, which is self-expression. And self-expression is a fundamental part of sharing our gifts and talents with the world. It's how we share what's important to us, what we believe in, and what we really desire. It's important to have an avenue to really express ourselves so that we can let our personality really shine. If we want to live our lives with purpose, we're going to have to learn to express ourselves and to express ourselves authentically, to actually be able to make a connection with people. Well, that is my recovery roadmap. I know this makes it all sound very simple, and actually it really is, but that doesn't mean it's not a long and really difficult journey requiring some really hard work. But I honestly believe that if you were to follow this recovery roadmap, you will not only immunize yourself against toxic people, but you will also build yourself up to live a fearless and happy life. But as I'm sure you've already realized, recovery from narcissistic abuse and building our self-love requires a lot of practice. It's like building a new muscle in how we think about everything, but most importantly, about ourselves. But if you do the work, I believe 100% you will get to the point of living a fearless, happy life. Okay, as I promised, we'll go through finding professional support. Okay, so number 1 is narcissistic abuse knowledge and experience. Now, I think knowledge is clearly essential. Most people also say that the professional having personal experience has also really helped. I can't vouch for that because I never had someone, I didn't have any narcissistic abuse focused therapy, but I know that's what many people say. So try and keep that into consideration. Secondly, your coaching or therapy does not need to be face-to-face. Online can be just as effective. I know your trust levels are super low and you may feel you have to have face-to-face relationship to be able to feel secure, but this really not is the case. And you will also find that if you are getting someone who specializes in narcissistic abuse, you're unlikely to find one very local to you. If you do, that's really lucky. They might be the best person for you to go for. But most times, you're unlikely to find anyone in a 100-mile radius. 3, review the websites of other professionals. Now, I do have a list that I put together that I'm willing to share, but you will need to send me a personal message for that, as it's missing loads of really popular professionals that I just haven't had the time to add. And some of it might be out of date by now. So I will send what I have to you secretly, and with the agreement you don't share it with anyone in any kind of public way, but it could be a good starting point for you. Number 4 is sign up to their mailing list so that you can get a flavor of them. Most professionals have a mailing list, and so when you get them, just read through them and see if somehow the way they communicate resonates with you. And number 5 is utilize all the free call offers. You know, just like me, many professionals do offer free calls, or maybe at a token charge. And I would try them all until you find the one that feels right for you. Now, I know some coaches and even therapists actually can be a little pushy in their calls, you know, to actually sign up with them, which is maybe what you're afraid of. And in a minute, I'm actually going to encourage you to get on that free call with me. Mine is specifically what I call an assessment and focus call. I assess your situation and then I help you come up with the things you need to focus on to help you move forward. But if you're not making the most of these free offers of support because you're worried someone might push you into signing up with them, then in this call, I will actually even talk through with you how to deal with these kinds of situations so as to lessen the anxiety of reaching out for help in that way. If you really want to heal, you really need to make the most of the support and guidance that is freely offered out there, I feel. Okay, but this brings me on to what my clients have to say. And I reached out to 4 of my clients, just hoping that at least one of them would be willing to come on the call tonight. And amazingly, all 4 have agreed. So the 4 of you, I'd just like to say thank you so much. I'm super, super grateful for all 4 of you coming on this call and for sharing your experience of working with me in this masterclass. So who's going to come out first?
I will.
Cheers, Dinah.
That's all right. Yeah, I found it really beneficial. I didn't feel like you were patronising or anything. You were quite straight down the line. Explain things as to why you did the exercises and what you would gain from it, which I found really helpful. Because sometimes people say, "Oh, if you do this, you know," and you're like, "Well, why have I got to do it?" Whereas you explained what I would gain from it. Yeah, I think I've come on in leaps and bounds since I've done it. I approach things in a different way, which I never thought I would do, if I'm honest. Yeah, it's made me take a real good look at myself, actually. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks, Dinah.
No worries.
Anyone else want to jump out?
Can you hear me, Chris?
Yeah? Oh, Elaine? Yeah?
Yes, how are you? I've had maybe 7 sessions with Chris, and my progress has been noted by everyone around me, basically. Chris really makes you feel comfortable. She gives you a safe platform to be vulnerable. I never really considered coaching before. I thought, oh gosh, I was really dubious about what it could really do for me. And I thought opening up to a stranger made me feel anxious as well. But Chris really puts you at ease. She gives you coping mechanisms and exercises. They really do take you out your comfort zone, but they're actually addressing your worst fears and overcoming anxiety. So that's where the real growth occurs. I've started doing things like journaling, which I used to kind of laugh at before. Journaling, meditating. I've become more spiritual. I feel more in control. I'm beginning to have self-love and self-esteem. And the thing I really like about Chris and I value about her is she really holds you accountable from one session to the next. She'll say, have you done this exercise? What did you gain from this exercise? And if you haven't done it, well, God help you, but she'll really keep you accountable. So I can't recommend Chris enough. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you so much, Elaine. Thank you. Mirella, Michelle, do you want to jump out?
I am muted. Thanks, Albatu, for going first. Gave me the confidence. Chris, like, I'm a bit like Elaine just said, like, I didn't believe in coaching before I met you. Because, yes, like, I saw how they, ask questions, possibly, but there's something about you, how you make us see things we never saw before. I mean, I'll speak for myself. Like, you literally give me a new set of glasses, at the same time giving me a kick up my backside when I need it, but with full support and full love and respect. And I so appreciate the space and the journey you've taken me on, and I don't see myself ever taking your number out of my phone.
Cheers, Mirella. Michelle, do you want to jump out? You don't have to if you don't want to. Yeah.
Michelle?
Yes, hiya. Good to see you, Michelle.
Yeah, I just want to really just sort of say how thankful I am for how you've helped me.
It's my pleasure, Michelle. we have our pleasure sessions.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and it's only through your support and guidance. The better relationship I have now with my son after my narc. It's amazing. It's made a tremendous difference.
Oh, thank you so much, Michelle. It's been lovely working with you.
Genuinely, I thank you for that.
Dinah, Elaine, Morale, and Michelle, thank you so much. You don't realize how much I appreciate what you've just done for me. And I look forward to your continued success in your recovery. You're all doing amazingly. Thank you so much. Okay, then we come on to my offer to you. So like I said, I'm offering this assessments and focus call free, gratis, and for nothing. You can find the link in the chat, and when I send the recording, I will provide the link in there too. If you signed up to this masterclass, it's because you're struggling in some way. Ask yourself why it wouldn't be worth talking to another professional who might be able to help you taking that next step forward in your recovery. Look, even if you don't have the money to pay for professional support, I would encourage you to go to these calls, because I think each of them, you know, the ones that are more authentic are really going to support you in helping you actually take one step further. Okay, so I would encourage you to try and build that confidence. And like I said, I'm happy to help you build that confidence in making the most of these calls, in taking them up and asking those questions you have, and see what value these people have to offer. And if you do have the money to sign up for coaching, then at least in the same way, at the same time, you will find someone that fits you well. Okay. Okay, so let's see. Are there any questions in the chat? No. Does anyone have any questions for me in the audience? No, also none? Well, I hope that means that you feel confident that you're able to implement this roadmap for yourself and understand everything. Or maybe you actually want to save your questions for when you book that call with me. So, what now? Okay, so I'm back with you and you can see my pretty face, okay? So, where to now is by tomorrow you should receive the recording of this masterclass together with the actual downloadable recovery roadmap for you to reference in future. You'll also get the self-care e-guide to help start you off in implementing a self-care practice if that's what you need, and a link to my free call so that you can book that free call with me. And thereafter, you will be receiving emails from me at regular intervals with tips and tricks on how to implement each step in the recovery roadmap. But whatever you choose to do, I honestly wish you all the strength and courage to do what is best for you. And as always, forever be committed to being good to yourself. Mwah.